China's Urban Crisis, a tale of crumbling dreams. The facade of progress. China's urban landscape, once a beacon of rapid development, now faces a stark reckoning. Skyscrapers that pierced the clouds, sprawling apartment complexes, and gleaming new cities were heralded as symbols of a rising superpower. From the bustling streets of Shanghai to the emerging hubs of Xi'an, the nation's construction frenzy reshaped its identity. Between 1990 and 2020, China poured more concrete than the United States used in a century, transforming rural landscapes into urban sprawl. Over 500 million people flocked to cities, fueling a real estate boom that accounted for nearly a third of the nation's economy. Yet beneath the glossy surface, a crisis was brewing, one of substandard construction, unchecked greed, and broken trust. The cracks begin to show. In recent months, reports of structural failures have swept across China, shaking public confidence. Over 200 residential buildings in provinces like Henan, Jiangsu, and Guangdong have shown alarming signs of deterioration. Floors buckle, walls fracture, and entire structures tilt precariously. In Zhengzhou, a newly built high-rise marketed as a pinnacle of modern living developed deep fissures in its foundation just months after residents moved in. In Shenzhen, a 4-story complex partially collapsed during heavy rains, leaving families homeless. Viral videos on platforms like Douyin captured residents fleeing with their belongings as ceilings sagged and tiles shattered, only for sensors to scrub the footage within hours. The term Tofu-Dregs has resurfaced, a haunting echo from the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, when poorly built schools crumbled, claiming thousands of lives. Today it describes buildings so flimsy they resemble the fragility of bean curd. These are not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a deeper malaise, decades of rushed construction, lax oversight, and systemic corruption. A system built on sand. China's real estate boom was driven by ambition, but undermined by shortcuts. Developers, under pressure to meet aggressive targets, prioritized speed over safety. Substandard materials, weak concrete, brittle steel became commonplace. Untrained workers, often migrants with minimal experience, were hired to cut costs. Safety inspections, when they occurred, were often perfunctory, with bribes ensuring approvals. In one case in Hubei, a whistleblower revealed a building's core structure used half the required steel, yet it passed inspection. The site was quietly razed, and the engineer vanished from public view. Local governments, reliant on land sales for revenue, turned a blind eye to violations. Families, encouraged by state propaganda to invest in property, poured life savings into homes that were more illusion than reality. Many apartments sold as investments now stand empty, their flaws hidden behind fresh paint and glossy brochures. When residents report issues leaking roofs, cracking walls, or shifting foundations, they are often dismissed with vague assurances or silenced outright. The human cost. The toll of this crisis extends beyond physical damage. In cities like Changsha, families who invested everything in luxury apartments now live in temporary shelters, their dreams shattered. In Nanjing, a couple discovered their new home tilting after a storm, only to be told it was normal settling. Their pleas for compensation went unanswered. Across affected regions, thousands face financial ruin, trapped in unsafe homes they cannot sell or repair. The psychological strain is palpable. Reports of anxiety, depression, and even suicides have spiked in communities hit hardest by these failures. The economic fallout is equally grim. Entire neighborhoods evacuated due to unsafe buildings have become ghost towns. Local businesses, shops, cafes, and markets shutter as residents flee. Property values plummet, and construction halts, leaving half-built skeletons to decay under the elements. In Tier 2 cities like Hefei, abandoned projects dot the skyline, their rusted cranes a stark reminder of unfulfilled promises. A culture of silence. The central government's response has been muted, with officials downplaying the crisis as isolated incidents caused by weather or local errors. The Ministry of Housing issued a brief statement promising inspections, but no timeline or accountability measures followed. State media continues to broadcast tales of urban triumph, ignoring the reality of crumbling towers. Online dissent is swiftly suppressed. Posts exposing structural flaws vanish, and those who speak out risk detention for disrupting public order. In Chengdu, a small protest by homeowners was dispersed within hours, its organizers detained. This silence reflects a deeper issue, a system where accountability is sacrificed for appearances. Corruption permeates every level. Developers, inspectors, and officials collude to protect profits over people. Whistleblowers are intimidated, and lawsuits are blocked to maintain social harmony. The result is a growing chasm between the state's narrative and the lived experiences of its citizens. A fragile future. As China braces for the summer rainy season, the fear of further collapses looms large. Buildings already weakened by poor construction face greater risks under heavy rainfall. Yet the government's focus remains on damage control, demolishing unsafe structures under cover of night, relocating residents with minimal notice, and offering little to no compensation. The real estate sector, once a pillar of growth, now teeters on the edge of collapse, with developers like Evergrande buried in debt and projects stalled indefinitely. The crisis threatens more than just buildings. Home ownership, a cornerstone of Chinese social identity, symbolizes stability and success. When homes become liabilities, trust in the system erodes. Online citizens voice their anger, coining terms like Tofu 2.0 to mock the resurgence of shoddy construction. Some have abandoned cities altogether, returning to rural roots, or drifting as internal migrants wary of investing in a broken dream. Beyond the rubble, China's urban crisis is not just about failing concrete, it's about a failing system. The gleaming skylines, once symbols of progress, now mask a reality of greed, negligence, and silenced voices. As more buildings falter, the question is not just how many will fall, but whether the nation can rebuild trust in its institutions. For now, millions live in the shadow of uncertainty, their homes a gamble, their futures at risk. The cracks in China's cities run deeper than steel. They reveal a nation grappling with the cost of its own ambition. Ghost cities and empty promises. Across China, from the neon-lit sprawl of Shanghai to the quiet plains of Yunnan, vast cities stand eerily silent. Estimates suggest 70 to 100 million apartments lie vacant enough to shelter the entire population of Germany with room to spare. These are not just empty homes, they are monuments to a broken system. Once celebrated as the backbone of China's economic miracle, the real estate sector now teeters on the edge of catastrophe. The danger lies not in the emptiness, but in the fragility of these structures known as tofu-dregs for their flimsy construction. Walls crumble, floors sag, and entire buildings give way, threatening the lives of those who trusted in them. For millions, buying a home has become a gamble with deadly stakes. A nightmare in concrete. Imagine waking to the sound of splitting walls, your ceiling bowing under invisible strain, or water seeping through cracks that weren't there yesterday. In China, this is no nightmare, it's reality. From Guangzhou to Xi'an, residents report buildings failing mere months after completion. In Henan, a premium high-rise saw its facade peel away after a storm, exposing rusted beams and crumbling concrete. In Chongqing, a family fled their apartment when the floor tilted overnight, leaving their belongings scattered in a scene of chaos. Social media platforms like Weibo briefly buzz with footage of terrified families clutching children outside collapsing complexes, only for censors to erase the evidence by dawn. These are not isolated tragedies, but the fallout of a construction frenzy driven by profit over safety. Developers drowning in debt raced to erect towers at breakneck speed using diluted cement and subpar steel. Inspections were often a formality, with officials allegedly bribed to sign off on shoddy work. The result, buildings that look impressive but are hollow at their core, ready to collapse under the weight of their own flaws. The term tofu-dregs, first popularized after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, exposed deadly shortcuts in school construction, now defines an entire era of reckless building. The cost of a broken system. The real estate boom was fueled by a toxic mix of ambition and corruption. Local governments, desperate to boost GDP, sold land to developers at a feverish pace. Builders, strapped for cash, cut corners to meet deadlines while regulators looked the other way. Contracts went to unqualified crews and safety standards were treated as suggestions. In one chilling case in Shandong, a collapsed beam revealed it contained only a fraction of the required reinforcement. Yet the site had passed multiple inspections. The whistleblower who exposed it was silenced, and the structure was demolished under cover of night. The human toll is staggering. Families who sank their savings into these homes now face ruin. In Wuhan, a young couple still pays a mortgage on an apartment too dangerous to live in their dreams, replaced by fear. In Fujian, residents of a tilting tower were given hours to evacuate with no compensation or explanation. Many now live in makeshift camps, their life savings locked in worthless properties. The emotional strain is crushing. Parents lie awake, listening for creaks that signal collapse, while children are taught to avoid certain rooms. In some cases, tragedy has already struck. A collapsing balcony in Hunan claimed a young woman's life, and a child in Jiangsu was injured by falling debris. A nation's trust in ruins. The economic ripple effects are profound. Entire neighborhoods once bustling now stand abandoned as residents flee unsafe buildings. Construction sites frozen mid-project dot the landscape like scars, their cranes rusting in silence. Local businesses, restaurants, shops, schools wither as communities empty out. The real estate sector, once a driver of growth, now drags the economy down, with developers like Country Garden teetering on bankruptcy and projects stalled indefinitely. But the deepest wound is to trust. In China, homeownership is more than a transaction. It's a cultural cornerstone symbolizing security and family pride. Parents sacrifice for decades to buy homes for their children. Young couples delay marriage until they secure a property. When these homes crumble, so does the belief in a system that promised prosperity. Online citizens vent their anger only to face censorship, or worse. In Chengdu, a small group of homeowners rallied for accountability only to be met by police and accusations of disturbing public order. Forums exposing construction flaws are shut down, and whistleblowers vanish, leaving a chilling silence. A ticking time bomb. As China heads into another rainy season, the fear intensifies. Weakened buildings face the strain of storms, and residents brace for the worst. Yet the government's response remains evasive. Official statements blame natural wear or minor issues, sidestepping the systemic failures at play. Demolitions are conducted quietly, often at night, with residents given little notice and no recourse. The Ministry of Housing has promised investigations, but no meaningful action has followed. State media paints a rosy picture of urban progress, ignoring the reality of families displaced and dreams destroyed. The crisis raises haunting questions. How many more buildings are at risk? How many families live in homes that could collapse at any moment? And what happens when a nation's faith in its own progress crumbles? The real estate sector, once a symbol of China's rise, now exposes its vulnerabilities, a system built on shortcuts, silenced voices, and unkept promises. A call for truth. China's housing tragedy is more than a story of failing buildings. It's a story of betrayed trust and human cost. The gleaming towers, meant to embody a nation's ambition, now stand as warnings of what happens when greed outpaces responsibility. As families flee their homes and ghost cities multiply, the silence from those in power grows louder. Will anyone take responsibility for this engineered disaster? Or will the cracks both in concrete and in confidence continue to spread until the entire facade collapses?